So I just got married, and my wife and I just decided to take a 2-week trip to Portugal. So we went all the way from Porto, all the way down the coast, and then over to Madeira to essentially explore the entire country. This video is all about that trip. I want to talk about all the places we went to, what was exceptional in terms of photographing them, and then give you a bit of a good feel for what it might be like if you want to travel Portugal. So if you're at all interested in traveling Portugal or photography in general, this video is for you. Portugal's split up into multiple regions, and each of them is quite distinct from the other. I like to think of it as the northern region, the central region, the Lisbon area, Alentejo, the Algarve, Madeira, and the Azores. On our trip, we hit almost everything except for the Azores. And then a quick note on the photography gear that I brought, which as usual was way too much. I brought my Sony a7R IV as my main camera, a 14mm, a 24mm, a 35, a 50, and an 85. I probably could have packed a 24-70 and been happy, but I brought too much anyway. I also brought a leftover disposable Kodak point and shoot. We had one extra from the wedding, so I grabbed it on the way out the door. I also brought my Peak Design tripod. It's small, easy to pack, and I threw all of this in my 20-liter Peak Design backpack. So we started our trip flying into the north into Porto. Porto is cool because it's one of the oldest cities in Europe, established in 275 BCE. And it was an outpost for the Roman Empire, and we were able to stay at a hotel, which was right in the heart of everything. It's a World Heritage Site by UNESCO, and our hotel was essentially right in between the two things that they note as the World Heritage Areas. So the Louis I Bridge, and then Monastery of Serra do Pilar. One thing I'll say, terrible at Portuguese, I'm gonna butcher everything. So if you're a wine head at all, you've probably heard of Porto. It's where port wine comes from. And this was clearly one of the big attractions for the tourist area. The Douro River runs right through it, and it's full of boats that effectively used to carry all of the wine casks up the river from the vineyards all the way out to the port. The city was a wonderful place to wander around and shoot street photography. It had a very, very kind of quaint, old feel. And it was interesting, it felt very old. And unfortunately, a lot of the buildings were abandoned. Now we looked into it a bit, and I guess in the financial crisis around 2006, there was a problem with tenants having to leave the apartments and leave these different buildings. And essentially the rent prices going so low that the owners had to abandon the buildings themselves. And there was a collapse of the market. So even though you were in this UNESCO World Heritage Site, kind of the heart of downtown Porto, or at least historic Old Town Porto, there were a lot of abandoned buildings, which was a bummer to see, but certainly an interesting area to walk around and photograph. And all that said, Porto was charming. It was a lot of fun, a very friendly city with lots of things to see and do, really incredible views everywhere you looked, and quite frankly, a fun urban area to be. So from Porto, we took a trip inland to the acclaimed Douro Valley. To get there, we simply followed the Douro River up to a small village called Lamego. Lamego is another incredibly old village, and it was a great view of kind of the country life of Portugal. As you drive there, you'll see plenty of the stucco and terracotta roofed homes in these small, quaint little villages. And the area looked like wine country, hilly, a little bit more dry, vineyards everywhere. And we had a blast getting to explore and kind of relax in the area. Of course, the thing to do is to visit the vineyards, and so we did. We went to a place called the Quinta Portela de Baixo, and this was a cozy, family-owned little vineyard. They gave us a really nice tour, and we had a blast just watching the sunset. The photography was a bit overshadowed by the wine, but I would highly recommend visiting the Douro Valley. Now from there, we wanted to actually visit the central region, but we got a bit of a stomach bug, so we booked it instead to Lisbon, to our hotel, to recover. Now Lisbon was exceptional. A bit unlike Porto, Lisbon felt a little bit more modern. Lisbon's actually an older city, and it's the second oldest European capital in the world, just behind Athens. And it's from 1200 BCE-ish. So there was a lot of rich history in the city, but you could tell that there was also kind of the modern build around it, which made it a lot of fun to explore. There were a lot of different neighborhoods, and each of them had their own kind of unique aspects. So we spent a lot of time wandering through those neighborhoods. And of course, the whole time we had to taste the pastéis de nata in each of the areas to see who had the best. If you don't know what they are, they're essentially a Portuguese egg tart that's like amazing. And everywhere you go, you're gonna get handed one. So in Belém is where they originated, so we had to go there. But then of course, Lisbon's got plenty of bakeries that have put it up to the test and tried to make the best. We had a lot of fun trying them. So just outside of Lisbon is Cascais, which is a historic resort town that's got a long history of hosting kings and all sorts of royalty. It's also got a casino there that was the inspiration for James Bond Casino Royale. So a very fun, a little bit more upscale area to walk around. Another cool resort on the beach, fun place to photograph, fun place to wander through and explore. About 40 minutes up the coast of that, you can actually get to the westernmost point of continental Europe, Cabo de Roca. And that was a really cool point to see the sunset. It's these very steep, notable coastlines with the beautiful blue and turquoise ocean right there. It was packed up there, I'll say, but a very pretty place to go and photograph. And if you go up the coast just a little bit more, there's some really quaint little towns right on the coast that are incredibly picturesque and a lot of fun to explore. So after the Lisbon area, we went into the Alentejo region, which is effectively the whole area south of Lisbon, including some of the coastline. Now, when we went this way, we weren't going to the wine region and we weren't going to the coast. We actually went to this really cool brutalist style nature resort. And this was just a fun stop along the way for us to get a few days of relaxing recovery. We had a lot of fun shooting some photos at this place. It wasn't exactly something that you would expect necessarily in Portugal. We had a lot of fun with it. Now, what you might expect in that region was the coastline that we saw, and that was very dramatic. It felt like every area of the coastline looked completely different. There were very jagged cliffs, there were rocky shores, and then there were massive sand beaches. I'll also note the Alentejo region, it's a hot, dry region, and the wines from here are by far my personal favorite from Portugal. After the Alentejo, we went to the very southern point, which is known as the Algarve. Now, if you've seen any nature photos from Portugal, they're probably the Algarve coast. It's known for its incredible coastline with yellow cliffs, amazing caves and arches, and it certainly didn't disappoint. It was a very beautiful, fun coastline to explore. We spent a sunrise at one of the more popular arches in the area, and I was pleased. I mean, it was shoulder season, but it was completely quiet. We were the only people there, which gave me plenty of time and space to explore around and build a composition. The other cool thing is you can actually kayak in the arches and the different tunnels and caves that they have on the coastline. This was a bit of a touristy thing, so I didn't have high expectations for it, but we both loved it. And frankly, it was amazing. There were some kind of sketchy caves that we were able to kayak through and some different tunnels that we were able to kayak through. So highly recommend it if you go. So unlike Porto and Lisbon, this area is a lot more focused on nature and the ocean. It's not quite the urban or street photography that you might get into, but I will say that in general, the small villages and towns are very cool. They're all that stucco terracotta style home, and it seemed like every single home had its own custom painted tile to label what the house name was. So, as I'm sure you might know from learning in school, Portugal's got a bit of a history of having an empire, and like any good empire, the Portuguese Empire conquered a lot. And one of the first things that they actually conquered was a small island off their western coast, almost closer to Africa, called Madeira. This was in 1420. Madeira essentially still stays as a part of Portugal today, and it was an incredibly cool island to visit. Madeira is almost known colloquially as kind of the Hawaii of Europe because it's volcanic, it has a lot of different microclimates like Hawaii, and it's certainly a tourist mecca. To our surprise and happily, it was indeed something wholly different than the rest of Portugal that we got to explore. Also, a side note, if you want to visit Madeira and you want to rent a car, make sure it's automatic. You do not want to drive standard here. The hills are absolutely absurd. So Madeira was a blast to photograph. With these many different microclimates, it meant there were a lot of areas within a few minute drive that were drastically different from the one you may have come from. So one of our favorites was the hike of Vereda de Ponta de São Lourenço, which is essentially the easternmost tip of Madeira, and it's just got these really dramatic cliff lines that you're able to hike all the way out to. A kind of easy hike, but about 4 miles, and a really exciting place to go. On top of that, they've also got this amazing hike at the very top of the mountain where you can hike from point to point between 2 of the highest peaks. Now, we were weathered out a bit because it is in the clouds and we didn't get a break in the clouds. So it's still a lot of fun the bit that we did, but we didn't get the full panoramic views that you might typically see up there. The other thing Madeira has is what are called levadas, which are essentially engineered pathways to move water, and they also work as good hiking trails. So there's tons of these, and you can find them all over the island to make kind of easy walks and see a lot of dramatic scenery. In some instances, you can walk along super high cliff lines, and this was all built to move water, but works perfectly as a hiking trail. So all in all, Portugal is amazing. We had a ton of fun photographing it and traveling through the entirety of the country. The people were amazingly welcoming, and it was just a convenient, fun trip. I hope this video is something that might inspire you to consider traveling to Portugal. And if you're interested, I'll be selling a few of the prints from photos that I took on the trip, so check the link below. Lastly, please like and subscribe if you liked this video, and thank you so much for watching.